Good evening. Chair calls to order Legislative Session Day 22-023. I would ask you to please join us in standing for the pledge, followed by the opening prayer by Councilman Woods. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Creator of the universe, we ask for your blessing at this time. Allow this meeting to begin in order, be conducted in peace, and close in harmony. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Agenda item number 4, presentation of proclamations. In council, we have one that's been sitting for quite some time. This evening, we have the honor of having Mr. Hubble and his family, who was nominated and approved as a Harford Living Treasurer by the council on April 13th, 2004. And unfortunately, prior to Mr. Hubble receiving his proclamation, Councilwoman Chenoweth passed away. This was recently brought to our attention by his wife. Tonight, we would like to present Mr. Hubble with his proclamation. Harford Living Treasurer, Harold Hubble. Councilman Jan Giordano, would you please step down in the well? Mr. Hubble, you and whoever you would like to come with you, come forward, please. Mr. Wagner, whenever you're ready.
Whereas Chaplain Harold L. Hubble received the Harford County Cultural Arts Board recommendation to the Harford County Council for recognition as a Harford Living Treasure, and whereas Chaplain Hubble was born in Darlington on June 5th, 1932. He attended Churchville Elementary School and graduated from Bel Air High School in 1949. During his 28-year career, Chaplain Hubble worked at the Hub clothing stores in Bel Air and Aberdeen, advancing from a stock boy to a salesman, manager, and buyer. He also served as president of the Aberdeen Merchants Association. And whereas Chaplain Hubble served at the Oak Grove Baptist Church in Bel Air and as chaplain at multiple hospitals and organizations in Hartford and Baltimore counties for over 40 years, he dedicated 11 years as memorial chaplain for the Hartford and Cecil Counties Volunteer Firemen's Association. Chaplain Hubble received numerous awards and certificates for his faithfulness and volunteerism. He was instrumental in starting the chaplaincy program of the Hartford County Sheriff's Office, Bel Air Police Department, and Emergency Operations Command, and served as lead chaplain. Chaplain Hubble helped organize the Hartford County Farm Fair, where he served as chairman of the prayer breakfast for 14 years and initiated the Hartford County Commission on Aging. Now therefore, we, the County Council of Hartford County, Maryland, on this 20th day of September 2022, do hereby salute Chaplain Harold L. Hubble, a Harford Living Treasure, and be it further known that his lifetime experiences and contributions to the Hartford County community will provide a permanent record which will recall the past, inform the present, and guide the future of Hartford County, and that his memories of history have been recorded by the Hartford County Public Library oral historian and have become a part of the oral history collection of the library.
Years, right? 18 years. That's a long, long time. Why'd you wait 18 years? Well, I think you're sure. And I think we also got a little note from Jesse Baines as well to our office that said that. So, so congratulations. We appreciate you being around for 18 more years so we can finally, I'm going to give that to you. And how about, since you brought this back up, why don't you tell us a little bit then?
Well, Ronnie Chenoweth already started everything, and so that was good. And but unfortunately, she passed on before she saw it all the way through. And then we forgot about it for a while, and then recently we were celebrating his 90th birthday, and we were putting out some certificates and realized, where's his Harford Treasure certificate? And we didn't have it.
Well, I'm glad we're able to have him come today before us, and congratulations. Now I'm going to let you say a couple words.
I'm very thankful for the county council and for allowing this to be this evening. Sorry that Miss Ronnie couldn't be here because she was a very special friend, and we became very close and worked in many different areas. So I'm just very thankful for each one that is here, and just thank you for coming and being a part of my time. The Lord is willing, I'm going to give another 18 years at least. And if you don't like it, you'll just have to put up with it.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to meet you, and congratulations.
Tony, I'll take the mic. You're going to get some pictures.
Mr. Hubble and Mr. Giangiordano, ma'am,
Let's put this What'd she say? Scoot this way a little bit? Okay. Well, we're all short, so you should be able to see them behind us.
Nope, that's perfect right there. Yep. Okay.
Okay. All right, Tony. Congratulations.
Congratulations. I always remember if you're from the prayer breakfast.
That's right.
Congratulations. Good seeing you guys. Yes, we gotta get back on the breakfast.
Agenda item number 5, consideration of petitions, applications, appointments, and nominations. Originally, my thought was to hold these appointments until further review, but it's been brought to my attention that a couple of these are timely. So we will be moving on the Harford Center and the Library Board this evening, and we will move on the others at a future meeting. Executive appointments, Board of Directors, Harford Center. May I have a motion, please?
Council President,
Mr. Johnson?
I would like to make a motion for the new appointments of Faith Ratman and Patrick Spicer.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Been moved and second to approve the new appointments of Faith Ratman and Patrick Spicer. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry?
Council President, it would be the Harford Center.
Harford Center, okay, yes. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointments are hereby approved. Is Mr. Spicer, Ms. Ratman here? Okay. Public Library Board of Trustees, may I have a motion?
Council President.
Mr. Schroeds?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the new executive appointment of Terrence Flannery to the Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. It's been moved and seconded to approve the new appointment of Terrence Flannery to the Library Board Trustees. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Is Mr. Flannery in the audience? Okay. Special presentations, number 6, we have none. Approval of minutes. Legislative Day 22-022, September 13th, 2022. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved. Agenda item number 8, introduction and consideration of resolutions. Mr. Wagner, please read Resolution 02322 and 02422 into the record, please.
Resolution number 023-22, introduced by Council President Vincini at the request of the County Executive. A resolution designating the Kurtz Mansion consisting of 1.09 acres located at 1123 Baldwin Mill Road in Jarrettsville, Maryland, together with its buildings, environmental settings, and appurtenances as a Harford County Historic Landmark in accordance with Chapter 267 of the Harford County Code. Resolution number 024-22, introduced by Council President Vincenti at the request of the County Executive, a resolution to adopt a Harford County 2022 Hazard Mitigation Plan. There are no public hearings for either one of these.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Council, this evening, we have Mr. Arkowski with us this evening to speak to the mansion, please.
Good evening, Council President Vincenti and members of the council. My name is Jenny Jarkowski, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. With me tonight is Stephanie Soder, Historic Preservation Planner. We are pleased to be here before you tonight with Resolution 23-22 for the Harford County Landmark designation of the Kurtz Mansion. The designation of a Harford County Historic Landmark is outlined in Chapter 267 of the Zoning Code. The preservation of sites, structures, and districts of historical, cultural, archaeological, and architectural significance protects and enhances the quality of life in Harford County by safeguarding the county's historic and cultural heritage, strengthening the local economy, stabilizing and improving property values, and fostering civic pride in the beauty and the accomplishments of the past. The process of designating a county historic landmark begins with a nomination detailing the cultural or architectural significance of the property. The property owner must give consent in order to move forward with a county historic landmark designation. A public meeting is then held, allowing the Historic Preservation Commission to review the application and vote on whether to recommend landmark designation for the property. The benefits of obtaining landmark designation include protection of landmark property from demolition or inappropriate alteration, buffer protection from development of adjacent properties, and eligibility for Harford County Historic Preservation tax credits. After the designation is completed, the Historic Preservation Commission works with the owner to ensure future exterior alterations are appropriate. Historic Preservation Commission approval is also required for projects applying for the Harford County Historic Preservation tax credit to ensure that the work is completed in accordance with historic preservation best practices. The resolution before you tonight is for the Kurtz Mansion, located at 1123 Baldwin Mill Road in Jarrettsville. Mrs. Joy Woodfield, the property owner, is in support of this nomination. Unfortunately, she could not be here with us tonight, but she has been instrumental in documenting the history of the property and preserving the house with her late husband. The Kurtz Mansion is significant for its association with Martin Kurtz, a prominent carpenter, furniture maker, undertaker, and farmer in 19th century Jarrettsville. In addition to his work, Kurtz is notable for his prominent social positions in the Jarrettsville community, including as director of the Permanent Land and Loan Association and as a Fulton of the Supreme Circle Brotherhood of the Union, which was an early fraternal labor organization. The Kurtz Mansion also exhibits characteristics of the family's German heritage with roof slate tiles arranged in a distinctive diamond point pattern, and the fiber cement lap siding reflects the size of the original wood siding dating to 1880 that was found underneath aluminum siding during a modern renovation. The Kurtz Mansion is associated with the lives of persons significant in our history and represents the work of a noted architect or master builder. It embodies character, interest, or value as part of the heritage and culture of Harford County and has both yielded and shown the potential to yield important information about the history of Harford County and its people. At their July 26, 2022 public meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission recommended this property for designation as a historic county landmark. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Jarkowski. Council, anyone with any questions? Any comments? Mr. G, Attorney G?
Hi, Jenny. So just a quick question. It says the clad on all elevations in fiber cement lap siding mimicking the original wood siding. So there was wood siding, but there's no longer wood siding, and now it's just this fiber cement that looks like the wood siding?
That is correct. The original exterior that remained, they actually reutilized inside of the building as around the inside of the living room. So they were able to
for
reuse it.
historical purposes, it doesn't have to go back to that wood siding?
No, sir. Alternative materials are acceptable.
But any future work has to coincide with historical, like windows and doors and even the roofing shingles and so forth?
Yes, the roofing shingles, because they are slate, we would probably want to keep them as is, but in-kind replacement with alternative materials by a case-by-case basis is all right.
Okay.
It depends on the HPC's recommendations.
That's the only question I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Jan Giordano. Mr. Woods?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the presentation. Earlier, I was meeting with Aaron Pinman. We were actually talking about some of this, about how the process worked. And one of the questions came up, might be for you more so. Does it change an insurance burden, or does it change anything for the property owner, or is it harder to get insurance?
Only certain companies will cover historical properties. So very few companies out there, but they specialize in doing historical. The reason is that if there's any kind of a loss, it's more expensive to go and repair that, the roofing, or if, God forbid, or something like that. It costs more because you have to use horsehair plaster or something like that, and there's not a lot of people that do that.
Thank you. And also, I know when we added them to the past, they get the little placard, and people have the ability to look it up on the registry and visit. Is that still a thing, or is that up to the property owner if people are allowed to visit or see?
It would not be open to the public.
Okay.
No,
Very
it's
good.
still a private residence.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Anyone else? Mr. Schroeds?
I'm glad to see that they're, with the fiber cement, they're realizing that that looks a lot like wood with a duller finish. I'm sure that vinyl and other materials probably wouldn't be allowed, I'm pretty sure of.
Yeah, we would,
Should designate it.
yeah, vinyl siding we wouldn't really like to see, but
Right.
the fiber cement has been a very popular thing in historic preservation the last few years.
Right, and probably not even vinyl windows. I'm sure they would have to be wood, possibly.
It would
Is that
depend on a
questionable?
case-by-case basis, yeah. If they are already vinyl, in-kind replacement would be acceptable, but if they are wood, we would like to see rehabilitation
Right.
before replacement.
And I'm sure this owner has been consulted pretty thoroughly, and I'm sure it was a lot of thought that went into this. I commend her for doing this, because you never know. I'm glad, that the fiber cement will work, but, once you get into some serious renovation projects, the cost can really add up if you're using authentic materials. It really can. But I'm glad to see that people are, of course, but the big thing is that this will never be demoed. That would be tragic, of course. And if it didn't have this designation, anything could happen in the future, so.
Yep.
So that's the big thing there. And I know Councilman Jan Giordano mentioned the horsehair plaster. This really just protects the exterior, not the interior. So there would be more flexibility on the interior.
That's
So,
correct.
but very good. Congratulations. Yeah, we don't see too many of these, so it's nice when they come before the council.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Anyone else? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, ladies. Are there any other properties that are in your, I guess, purview of looking at for these historic landmarks?
Right, currently we have 70 landmarks or districts under this protection. We have an ongoing list of people. Some people reach out to us, like Mrs. Woodfield. We are also currently going through our own survey work and deciding if there are properties that we would like to see landmarked, and we will be reaching out to those landmark owners, but they can always approach us if they are interested in designating.
And just for a layman, what's the process of getting this again? Just a quick Cliff Note version?
Sure. So either we reach out or they reach out to us if they would like to consider landmarking. If the property has been surveyed for the Maryland Inventory of Historic Properties or National Register designation, then we can use that information to move forward. But if it hasn't been, the first step would be for us to go out to survey the property. We make sure that there is significance, which is the craftsmanship tonight that you saw, and integrity, so location, design, materials, and workmanship, making sure that that's still intact. And if that meets that criteria, then the first thing they would do is fill out a nomination form. The applicant does not have to be the property owner, however, we do need the property owner's permission to move forward. It is then reviewed by the staff. The staff create a report based on all of the characteristics that make it historic, and then it goes before the Historic Preservation Commission for their approval, and then it goes to you for review.
And once it gets that designation, is that property preserved in perpetuity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. Schroeder?
Yes, this might just be an opportunity for you to do a PR for, you know, what the benefits are of this. So I know that there's a tax credit, but you have to, I believe you have to follow the Department of Interior standard, and of course, it has to be blessed by the local preservation for any improvements. But if you could just tell everyone what this would qualify them for. We realize that the materials for historic properties to make it like the original is going to cost a lot more, but to offset that, if you could talk about the tax credit for anybody else out there that might know of historic properties.
Sure, so the tax credit, like you said, it does have to go through the Historic Preservation Commission for approval before they can receive the tax credit. However, there is a list that is actually in our design guidelines that are here. If anyone wants to see them, they're available online as well, of reimbursable expenses. So if you were to do, say, for example, windows, that would be a reimbursable expense. Anything on the exterior usually is. You would go through us to make sure that it was a reimbursable expense, and then you would get it's a 10% tax credit. Right now, it's 10% tax credit for those reimbursable expenses up to a certain amount. I believe it's $7,200 right now. There's also the ability to go for the Maryland state historic preservation tax credits as well, since you have local designation. So, and that's 20%, and that's additional, not
Right.
with it. So that could be a lot of money that they're saving.
Great. So there you go. Thank you.
Council President, I got one.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. Do we have any historic landmarks for, let's say, the Underground Railroad or anything like that?
Berkeley. Lots of-
Sorry, I missed that. Actually, we do. So the Hayes High House on the Harford Community College campus is a Network to Freedom site, and that has local designation and National Register designation as well. So that is one of them, yes. But other than that, no, not at this point. But we are always looking for more diversity within our landmarks. So if anybody knows of any sites, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you
I
very
thought the
much.
Rigby House in
So the Rigby House
Darlington,
is,
you know, near the Hosanna in
that
Berkeley.
is, it's more well-known for its Revolutionary War history. I'm not sure if the Underground
Okay.
Railroad is actually
might-
confirmed. Could be, though.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation. We'll consider this at the next meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Council, next we'll have Mr. Ayers and Ms. Planner come forward. Good evening. I'm glad to see the short version.
I have the long version with me as well. Okay, good evening, Council President Vincenti and council members. I'm Acting Director Rick Ayers from the Department of Emergency Services, and with me is the branch manager from Emergency Management, Linda Ploner. But before I talk about the hazard mitigation plan, it would be remiss of me if I didn't also recognize Harold Hubble, who served as my chaplain for our department for over 20 years and helped a lot of the employees that worked for our department and me personally. And he did it as a volunteer. He never expected anything. And I didn't know that was going to happen tonight, but Harold, I wanted to also recognize you. So we're here tonight to talk about the hazard mitigation plan, which is really any action that's taken to reduce or eliminate any long-term risk to people and property from disasters in Harford County. As you know, we do receive federal grant funding to help us with hazard mitigation and also recovering some of the costs when we are faced with the disasters in the county. And the reason why we need the county council to adopt our plan through a resolution is it's really the final piece of the approval process. Without the county council's approval of this plan, we would not be eligible for any of the federal grant funding that would be available to Harford County. So I did give each one of you a copy of what is entailed, and it involves the meeting with all three of the municipalities, other county departments, and we got their buy-in to help us write the plan. And then tonight, like I said, this is the final piece of the approval process, and we would encourage, your passing of this plan. We only have to do this once every 5 years, so we'll be good now till
2027.
2027, thank you. So I'm welcome to answer any questions, but that's why we need your help with this.
Linda, do you want to add anything?
We've gotten interim FEMA approval pending formal resolution. So FEMA has reviewed it. They've actually gone through it 3 separate times with us. We had them do an informal draft review to help the team, because it was a whole hazard mitigation planning team that produced this document. We had them go through it. They provided us with a lot of recommendations and a lot of hints and tips for things to improve. We did add that. We had them initiate a formal review. They came back with some more feedback based on some of their planning changes that they incorporated in that we kind of weren't expecting, but it did occur. So we made some additional revisions and additions to this plan and submitted it formally for the final time in July. And again, they approved it for us in August. So we're just waiting now for just this final last piece of legal.
Thank you. Councilman Woods, why don't I start with you?
Really, I guess you're dealing with Sarah Wolf.
Yes.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, I know this year they added, with mitigation plans, they were adding a lot more basically for us, I remember a lot of the beginning of the COVID response, Sarah and a lot of the mitigation team were stuck out doing that, and they were heavily working on a lot of stuff, but we were reading through it today, actually, and I know disasters I've been deployed to before, I've received county plans or jurisdiction plans, and we get it, and honestly, it's a really quick guide for the council's benefit. As a FEMA responder, it's actually a really fast guide to give us demographic questions, hazard issues. It really helps responders when you get there. But on the other hand, if it's poorly written, we just throw it aside, and it's really useless. And Hartford County has always been outstanding. Like I've said many a times, I'm very proud of our team from Hartford County. I mean, I've been all over this country doing this work, and yeah, we're the best. There's no question in that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Woods. Anyone else? Councilman Giangiordano?
Good evening, Mr. Ayers. How are you? I almost want to try to imitate your voice, but I don't think I can.
That's not going to work.
I probably can get it. I've talked to you a couple of times. And so I know for me, obviously, you know what I do, insurance and everything. The biggest issue is the flood insurance and how they've changed how flood insurance works and how it basically is rated and so forth. And I see that as one of the hazards in here, and they're talking about wind, weather, tornado, wind, but nothing about hurricane preparedness too. So I don't see that in there, and my always biggest concern is I'm just waiting for one day when a storm comes up to Chesapeake as a hurricane, and it's a Category 1 or more, and the damage that's going to do, especially if it's a wet summer and the soil is soft in the tree roots like we had about 10 or 15 years ago, where how do you prepare for that?
So just before
that a good
Rick jumps
question?
in, no, it is. It's actually a fair question. But we highlighted some of the top threats in our presentation that we provided to you. But if you go into the plan itself, you'll see that we've got soil movement, which is a new one for us. And we have earthquake, and we have wildfire, and we have tropical storm and hurricane and tornado and drought.
Any
And then we've
sinkholes?
also they've added a whole list of new criteria that they wanted us to look at, and we have addressed that.
And we can get that whole thing online? Is
Yes.
that whole
This
book you
plan,
have right there?
once we've finished the resolution, this will be published on the county website. And there'll be links through both planning and zoning and through emergency services.
And I know one of the biggest issues I have is advising and letting people know flood insurance doesn't have to be a stream or a river to flood, but the way flood insurance works, unfortunately, is sometimes two adjacent properties have to flood in order for it to pay out, which is, I don't agree with, and they haven't changed that. But how do we get awareness out to people where, believe it or not, it could be a water main breaks in a neighborhood and floods that neighborhood? That's a flood.
Yes, it is. If water comes in from outside of your home,
Yeah.
it's considered flood.
A lot of people don't know
So one of the things
that.
that we do is we teach when we go out for any kind of outreach, whether it's at a volunteer fire company's fair, or if it's at the farm fair, or if we're out teaching Prepare Because You Care classes. That's one of the first things that I talk about is, look at your homeowners, work with your insurance agent once a year, review your policies, make sure you've got all your dots and T's crossed. And one of the things that I really do talk a lot about is flood insurance. Harford County's a Class 6, so we get a 15% discount because of the work that the Planning and Zoning Department, floodplain managers, and their staff do. This hazard mitigation plan helps as part of their community rating system. I can't talk a whole lot about that because that's really Planning and Zoning's function, but I know that part of what we do with our outreach efforts, and then part of what we do with this plan and the documentation that we put into this, helps towards that discount.
Do you have anything to do with the, I guess, the ratings for the areas for fire departments and getting them, instead of being like a 9 or a 10, to a 6 or 7? You don't have anything on that?
No.
Okay.
ISO rating.
Yeah, ISO.
Each department handles it.
One thing I would like to mention, though, and I probably should have said this in the beginning, before Linda came and worked for us in Harford County, she was an employee of FEMA. So we have the added benefit of her knowledge from FEMA, and a lot of local jurisdictions actually hire contractors now to write their hazard mitigation plan. And we're fortunate that Linda and the staff in Harford County wrote our plan. We didn't hire an outside company to come in and write it for us.
Do you have a card, Linda?
I do, but not with me. Sorry.
Can you send me something?
Absolutely.
Send me a card too, so I can have that.
Yep.
And I appreciate that, and I definitely appreciate that information. Thank you. That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? I do know that programs, plans like this help us be prepared for wind events like we had a few years ago. And we're very fortunate in this region that we don't suffer some of the other weather events that other jurisdictions have. So, but I appreciate you all staying on top of all of this. With no other questions or comments, then we will take this up at a future meeting. Thank you. Thank you for all you do, both of you. Agenda items number 9, 10, 11, and 12, we have no business this evening. 13 and 14, I believe there's no business this evening. 15, business from the council president. First and foremost tonight, I want to congratulate our council attorney, Mr. Kearney, on the birth of his 6th grandchild today. Congratulations, sir. Our Health Officer Search Committee, just to give you a quick update on that, We've spent the past 2 mornings interviewing applicants, narrowing the search down to just a few. We've had 40 applicants or thereabouts total. I want to thank again the committee consisting of Mary Nasuda, Vicki Jones, Dr. Moy, Barry Klein, Paul Lauder, Dr. Feldman, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Wagner, and myself. They've done a great job along with Tiffany Stevens from HR. Done an outstanding job making themselves available to look at each one of these applicants. This past Friday, I had the opportunity to meet with members of our delegation and members of the group that got together to look at TransSource, Patty Hankins and Amy O'Neill. They've got a new concern that they're looking at, has to do with offshore wind and the possibility and concerns of it coming through our jurisdiction at some point. So they're just kind of starting and keeping us abreast of what's going on. Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend the Harford County Farm Bureau picnic, which turned out to be in part a benefit for the Archer family, Jim and Janet, after they suffered a devastating fire on their farm. Jeannie and I wish to express our deepest condolences to the family and friends of our good friend Barney Edwards. He lived in the Aldino, Aberdeen area. He's a Bel Air High School graduate in 1967, I believe, a United States Marine vet, sharpshooter, landmine warfare demolition expert. He was a Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and he was also worked in Edgewood the rest of his career, and sadly he passed away recently. Barney truly enjoyed the outdoors, was an avid golfer, avid hunter, and we appreciate his service to not only our community, but our country, and he will be missed by many. And with that, Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. We don't normally do this up here, but I'm looking down the dais, and I want to thank Councilman Schroeds. I didn't say this last week, but I'm going to say it this week, that Councilman Schroeds put together a agricultural preservation committee working group that was looking to change the Ag Pres program in a way that it was fair and equitable for not just the northern part of the county, but also for the entire county. It's on hold right now, so Councilman Schroeds and I and some members up here won't be around to see the work that Councilman Schroeds has put in, along with the members of the working group. But I just want to commend him on his work and dedication for that program, because we have seen that the Ag Pres program needs an overhaul. Like, this isn't 1980, this is 2022. And we know that by opening it up to other zoning districts, in my opinion, to other zoning districts, that it would be more fair and equitable for the entire county, especially the southern end of the county, that would create open space for the people that are in the more urban areas of the county. So I just want to say publicly that I appreciate everything that you've done on that aspect, and kudos to you. So thank you very much. And with that, Council President, I'll yield my time back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Well said. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Councilman Jan Giordano.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Just condolences to a friend, daughter, 15 years old. She, Ella Breezy, passed away last week. She had cancer. She never complained. She was strong, and you know, unfortunately, we lost a bright star. So my condolences to the Breezy family, and that's it. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Jan Giordano. Mr. Schroeds.
Thank you, Council President. Just want to thank everyone for coming out to Jarrettsville over the last couple of weeks to see the beautiful sunflowers. I know that, you know, everybody's coming out and making lots of memories and having good times. But what it really also does is it supports our community. It supports a lot of nonprofits, a lot of religious organizations, and a lot of individuals and families who desperately need it. And so that's what the money goes for, and we all appreciate you for coming out. And you know, it's just a great time, but then at that same time, that little bit of money that you're paying is going to some great causes in our community. So thank you all for that. Also, Council President Vincenti mentioned that there was a Farm Bureau picnic over the weekend and fundraiser for the Archers. I just want to thank you all again for supporting them after the horrific fire that damaged, well, it was total damage to their barn and shop and lots of equipment inside. And just want to thank everyone who continues to support their family. They are wonderful, wonderful people. Want to express my condolences to the family and all the friends of the congregation of Father Henry Kunkel of St. Mary of Assumption Catholic Church in Powellsville. He just passed away, and you know, everybody loved him. He's been a fixture in the community, in the Catholic Church for a long time, and I know that a lot of people are going to really miss him. It's hard to really imagine going to the church without, you know, being able to see him. So just want to express my prayers to all of his family and friends.
Thank you, Mr. Schroes. Mr. Wagner?
When someone has as full a life as Harold Hubble has had, it's hard to fit on that proclamation all the accomplishments and all the things that he's done. And as I read through it and I went back to reread what my copy shows here, there was one thing that was amiss and it couldn't be included because it just took up too much room. But you would be hard-pressed in Harford County to find anybody who has visited more sick, more elderly, more people in nursing homes, extended care places. You would be very hard-pressed to find anyone that has visited more of those people in our community than Harold Hubble. And this goes back in my family to my grandparents and my parents and many others, but you know, you could always count on anybody who was in the community that Harold knew of or heard of. If they were in a hospital, he'd get there before or after surgery or whatever you may be there for. You could always count on a visit. And that is certainly something that's commendable and something that I don't think anybody else can possibly say that they can achieve that kind of a level of service. And we thank you for that in all the years. Thank you, Harold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Well said. Mr. Bueller?
Nothing tonight, Council President. Thank you.
Mr. Woods?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to say it, but since you brought it back up, I'll tell a quick story about Chaplain Hubbard. Back 30 years ago, when I was very new in the fire department, and I responded on a call 2, 3 in the morning, and it was a fatality, and it was a friend, someone that I knew, and it was a traumatic scene. It was on 152, and we'd actually lost a provider that night too. He walked off the scene from that call and never came back. It was that bad of a call. And we lost a deputy that night also who quit his job the next day because of that same call that we dealt with. And I was destroyed. You know, I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, here comes our chaplain, and sat and talked to me in the back of the ambulance for about 3 hours. And I stayed in the fire department because of that, to be honest, because I actually thought about leaving too. I didn't think I could ever do it again after that night. And I still think about that night a lot. And I think years later I asked, would you like to see my wife's in my wedding? But someone else came up. But I wasn't going to bring it up, but I thought, you know, that's how important you were to the fire service. 3 o'clock in the morning, you came out just to help some 16-year-old kid that you had no idea who it was having a hard time with a call. So, thank you.
16?
Something like that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Woods. Agenda item number 17, comments and inputs from attending citizens. Do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. President, we have 10 this evening.
Okay. With 10, please be mindful of your time and respectful of each other.
Glenn Dutter, followed by Janine LaCour.
Mr. Dutter?
Mr. Dutter?
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Glenn Dutter, 1806 Park Beach Drive, Aberdeen, 21001.
Thank you.
Good evening. When I first read the wetlands delineation report for Abingdon Woods, I was surprised to find out that 2/3 of the sampling points were classified as wetlands, forested wetlands, and that's in addition to the marsh on the left and the shrub swamp on the right. The report went on to say that Abingdon Woods was a complex of permanent stream, intermittent streams, ephemeral streams, and seasonal ponds. It also stated that during periods of heavy rainfall, a lot of these wetlands were interconnected. When I read that, I could not believe, and I was surprised to find that the state and the county said Abingdon Woods wasn't worth protecting, because a system like that removes silt, it removes nitrogen, phosphorus, and it sequesters carbon. So since I was so surprised, I thought maybe I ought to show the results of that decision. In June, I started collecting water samples, and this water sample was collected in June after the rain. And I know you think like it looks like tap water, but it isn't. It's water out of the intermittent stream on the east side of Abingdon Woods. Clear as a bell. After construction started, I collected another one in July, and you can see it's slightly turbid. There's a little bit of siltation in it, but not much. Then in August, after a rain, you can see the situation changed dramatically. That's a lot of silt. And it may not look much to you because you're only looking through an inch of water in clear glass, but if you turn it upside down, take the lid off, you can't see the bottom of this bottle. And I couldn't see the bottom of that intermittent stream. And then lastly, in early September, I took this sample, and although it's not as bad as one I just showed you, you can see that there's still silt in there. And this is 2 weeks later. I expected more of it to settle down. Finally, last week, thinking maybe I could show you something else, I collected this sample from that intermittent stream, and I don't know what I've got. That's not silt, that's color. And I can't explain that color. I thought at first it was tannic acid could be a good explanation for that. The tannic acid is usually red-brown. I can't explain why one is colored. The point of all this is that this kind of damage that you see here to those creeks is going to affect Otter Point Creek, it's going to affect Bush River, and it's going to affect the bay. I fully understand that as construction nears completion, this effect will not occur, but a lot of the water that comes down into those streams comes from Abingdon. And once the project is completed, there won't be an Abingdon Woods to filter.
Mr. Dutter, please bring your comments to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Janine LaCour, followed by Greg LaCour.
Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record.
Janine LaCour, 1820 Park Beach Drive, Aberdeen, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I just wanted to commend some of the comments I heard earlier tonight. Chad, just like you like to see the properties preserved. That's why I've been very much involved in learning about the historic aspects of my community. And we've learned a whole lot of different things. And I will say the community that I live in, I learned that Perryman is actually eligible for the preservation in Maryland Historic. So the county does have an opportunity to take action there. And there's a number of properties in that area that also need some support from looking at the archaeological aspects of those properties. We all know the Perryman Peninsula had a whole lot of slave dwellings in that area as well. And there have been other surveys done in the Perryman Peninsula particularly the BG&E property. There was archaeological surveys done there, and slave dwelling, slave artifacts were found, and that property was just developed. There wasn't anything done to preserve that. I do want to say that HA 1722 is the Perryman survey, and that has been designated as being eligible for a property for preservation on the Maryland Register. And that encompasses the town of Perryman. And what was also interesting there, there is some curious properties in that vicinity, and they have these very unusual tunnels underneath the homes in that area. And again, that's another opportunity that we as a county have to gather the resources to investigate and preserve what we have to understand about the life and practice of slavery that was on the Perryman Peninsula. The other aspect I thought that was very interesting, the comment about the ag preservation being on hold. It's very unfortunate. I don't understand why. I don't know why it would be on hold. But
I can easily speak to that at some point with you.
absolutely, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Because what we just keep seeing are things put on hold, particularly from what I see in the Perryman Peninsula. In 1997, the Perryman Wellhead Protection Plan was submitted to the county, and that was not implemented. In 2000, the Perryman Traffic Study wasn't implemented. In 2001, the Perryman Visioning Study wasn't done. And in 2008, the Perryman Community Recommendations for Sustainable Growth and Quality of Life recommendations were not implemented. I look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir. Name and address, please.
Greg LaCour, 1820 Park Beach Drive, Abingdon, Maryland. First, I would like to speak on behalf of one of my neighbors. And Mr. Hubble, this is for you. This is probably from Holly McComas, that I do some work with the McComas family. Every once in a while, I do get to help out families with services. And sir, you're there quite often. And once you stood up, I knew who you were. And that's an impact for somebody that you might not know on the street. I might not know you. But thank you, that the families do need you. They appreciate you. And I know the McComas family, if they were here, they would be up here saying the same thing. So I just wanted to thank you. Congratulations on your award. As we all, talked about a couple things, our community had a nice fundraiser over the weekend, and it was very successful. We had a lot of people that were friendly to our neighborhood come out. We raised about $10,000, and it was really nice. And I wanted to thank our community that came out and supported it, and even people from outside this community came in and supported it. And I just wanted to thank everybody on that. It's been a long summer since I've been up here. I know you guys have been on vacation, everything's good. We've been at work, in our community. I just want to let everybody know that over the summer, the Perryman community has been working with the state highway. These things include trucks on narrow roads, vehicles coming down the wrong way, down the right-hand turn lanes, stopping the trucks that are stopped, blocking intersections, speeding and aggressive driving, as well as numerous serious accidents on Perryman and Spasucia and 40. A lot of things going on there. So that's what we've been doing. We've been active, we've been at it, and I just wanted to let you guys know what we were doing. And then there's a new friend of ours that is celebrating a birthday today, and I know he's not here, but Jacob Bennett, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ron Stuchinski, followed by Stacy Stone.
Good evening, guys. Ron Stuchinski, 319 Marina Avenue, Aberdeen, Perryman Peninsula. First, Ms. Vincetti, thank you for mentioning Barney. I've known Barney a long time, too. Played many rounds of golf, ate many a meal at Giovanni's with Barney. He will be really missed. I noticed at the meeting, or at our event on Saturday, that I met a lot of people that actually were very encouraged at what we were doing, not just for us, but on behalf of the residents of the county. And many didn't understand what zoning was. They didn't even know we had a code for zoning. And I promised I would read the zoning code, parts of it, just to get it out there. The purpose of the zoning code is to promote the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community by regulating the height, the number of stories, the size of buildings, and other structures, the percentage of lot that may be occupied, the size of lots, yards, other open spaces, and location, and use of buildings, structures, and land for business, industrial, residential, and other purposes. The zoning code is enacted to support the master plan and designed to control traffic congestion on public roads, to provide adequate light and air, to promote the conservation of natural resources, including the preservation of productive agricultural land, to facilitate the construction of housing of different types to meet the need of the county's present and future residents, to prevent environmental pollution, to avoid undue concentration of population and congestion, to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewage, schools, recreation, parks, and other facilities, to give reasonable consideration, among other things, to the character of each district and its suitability for particular uses, with a view to conserving the value of buildings and encouraging the orderly development and most appropriate use of land throughout the county, to secure safety from fire, panic, and other danger, and to conserve the value of property. I think a lot of people don't understand that as land and homeowners, we all have the right of property values. Only other thing I wanted to bring up, I'm just going to each week touch on some different quotes that have been made in the last year we've been here. On January 11th, 52 days ago, was when Mr. Beulah finally started talking on our behalf, and he said, what we don't need in Perryman is more warehouses. He's also said he's represented District F for 7 years. He's gotten more traffic complaints from Perryman residents than all the rest of my district combined, by far. There we still are here. The residents have been dealing with this for the last 2 decades. They were against it from the beginning. The quality of life has gone down. To say that they knew this was coming, no. There's all kinds of issues that needs to be addressed. The environment, it needs a study. The safety. I'm not going to go into statistics because I could spend an hour here. I'm working with council attorney to stop this until these issues are addressed. I don't know if the council attorney is working with them still or not. Until these issues are addressed, there's just no way, because we need to, as the county executive said, when he first took office as county executive, we need to put our people, our citizens first, their safety, their well-being, and their quality of life. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Stacy Stone, 2106 Park Beach Drive, Perryman. As Glenn mentioned, we have been working this summer. I've been focused this summer on the safety and welfare and health of the Perryman citizens in respect to safe roadways and walkways. So as part of that, I developed a plan that showed changes in the community, signing changes as well as intersection changes that I would like to see implemented. In June, I met with State Highway Administration and shared those ideas with them. And they were going to get back to me in about 90 days, so that should be coming up very soon, on whether some of those ideas could be implemented or if they'll be studying those ideas. Now, I also recently met with the mayor of Aberdeen, Mr. McGrady. Is quite interested in working with me on getting roadway and signing improvements done in the road portion of the Perryman Peninsula that's owned by the city of Aberdeen. And as such, he is welcoming a meeting with the county to work, because there's a roadway that is owned by State Highway, the county, and the city of Aberdeen. It really takes all 3 of those government agencies to have changes done for the safety. this, of course, is the old Philadelphia Road where trucks stop, and anyone trying to get through there has to weave in and out of stopped trucks, and many times you go and there's head-on a tractor-trailer heading at you. So I just avoid that road now. And then finally, I wanted to get an update on what's going on with Spasucci Road project. So there's a traffic calming, widening, sidewalks, very, very much needed in that low-income community. Just a few days ago, I was coming into the community and I see a young mother pushing a baby in a stroller with a 2 or 3-year-old walking on Perryman Road with cars and trucks flying by her because there are no sidewalks. That needs to change. So I reached out to Glenn Hebel with the county. He did give me an updated Woodley road plans. I have those from April. He says they're still working with APG to get those approved. Might be pie in the sky. We'll see. But he did give me updated set of plans from those. Spasucci road plans haven't been updated. They haven't been changed since fall 2020. So that's 2 years ago. Now, he said that they are working on the next round of plans, so they'll be about 60-65% complete, and that he would share that with me coming up in winter or early January. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, ma'am.
Stephen Popolo, followed by Ellen Chanelli.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Stephen Poplar. I live at just over on Burlington Court in Edgewood, Maryland. And the reason why I came by tonight is one of the biggest problems I've been having with watching meetings online, especially with certain government events, there is no subtitles or closed captioning available, especially live. And that's been a problem for me for a number of reasons. One is that I do try to stay on top of what's going on throughout the county, and as well as for Board of Education, and I cannot even access the Edgewood Advisory Board online because there's no closed captioning option. I had reached out to Jansen Robinson earlier this year, and I asked if it was possible for subtitles and closed captioning to be available, and he had been able to get me in touch with Ms. Bryant, and she spoke with the IT department, and ultimately I was told that that was not an option, that it's not. This is a very problematic issue for me because as a deaf man, I need to be able to understand what's going on throughout the county. I have two, especially for Board of Education. I have 2 small children that attend school now, and I need to make sure I know what's going on and I don't have to ask my wife to translate for me. So I know I was, just prior to the evening, I spoke with someone, and apparently there's a discussion for room in the budget, although that's not a guarantee. And since there is a certain number of people who are deaf and hard of hearing, of all ages, in Harford County, I would really appreciate that the county council would consider a change in that. I don't want to have to rely on a third person to tell me what's being said by someone. I'm one of the primary sources kind of guy. I want to hear directly from the source and what people are saying. So I hope that, I don't have a big production about this, but I really hope that the county council will consider it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kearney, can we take a recess just for a couple of minutes?
Park Beach Drive in Perryman, Maryland.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I wish that I knew what Glenn was going to be speaking on. Of course, I should have known, but I'm going to make things a little bit more simple for people because this is my understanding. But inappropriate development in Harford County continues to pollute our watershed. Trees and forests play an incredible role in reducing stormwater and filtering pollutants from flowing into our watershed. Yet more and more trees are being cut down in Harford County. Has anyone noticed the 33 acres of trees gone at Route 24 and Plumtree in Bel Air? I have. How about Abingdon Woods? Do we know how many of the intended 219 acres of forest have already been cleared? The project is now temporarily halted as the Chesapeake Bay Foundation awaits their day in court to demand compliance with the state's Forest Conservation Act, but irreparable damage has already been done. After clearing the forests, or in some circumstances clearing farmland, buildings go up and parking lots are paved. With the increased amount of impervious surfaces, water runs off the land, traveling on the surface toward the streams. As this stormwater runoff travels to the streams, it collects pollutants and increases speed. The changes to the landscape not only increase the volume of water that goes to the stream, it also shortens the amount of time it takes the water to get to the stream. These increased or peak flows cause water to move quickly to the streams. This leads to flooding, stream bank erosion, widening of streams, sediment deposit in streams, a loss of fish habitat, and decline in water quality. What we do to the land affects the quality of the water in our streams, river, and the Chesapeake Bay. This in turn affects our drinking water. This November, I will vote for representatives that understand the balance between growth and preservation. I will vote for representatives that embrace community-driven development. I will vote for representatives that listen to the wishes of their constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kate McDonald, followed by Jillian Miller.
Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Kate McDonald, 2100 Park Beach. According to the state of Maryland and the Harford County website, the purpose of enterprise zones is to accomplish these objectives. Number 1, encourage the creation of well-paying new jobs for Harford County residents. 2, ensure retention and spur expansion of resident businesses. 3, promote development and occupancy of vacant and underutilized buildings and land. 4, support the county's commitment to revitalizing older industrial areas of Harford County. Let's look at number 1. We know for a fact these jobs average about $17 an hour, or $35,360 a year, gross, which is 62% lower than the average income in Harford County. We also know that many centers, which are already built and in use, struggle with finding employees and employee retention, and that many of those workers are coming from other areas of Maryland and not spending their money in Harford County. But at $35,360 a year, you really don't have extra cash to spend. Number 2, ensure the retention and spur expansion of resident businesses. This is just not happening, and I think you all know that. You're dumping massive freight distribution centers, which are leased by national companies like Amazon, Wayfair, Sephora, etc., that offer no benefit whatsoever to local businesses. In fact, to the contrary, you are hurting local businesses because the diesel truck traffic is already so bad in our area that fighting the trucks just isn't worth it to go to our favorite restaurants or shopping. To get to Bel Air via 543 or 24, you have to sit through several traffic signal cycles to get across 95, and it's only getting worse. Number 3, utilizing vacant buildings and spaces. You're also not meeting this objective. According to LoopNet.com, there is currently 2.2 million square feet of available warehouse distribution space in Harford County in the Perryman, Abingdon area. When you add the recent XPO site of 571,000 square feet that they just closed, another Craig project, the total is 2.8 million. These are all empty buildings sitting and blighting the Perryman, Abingdon areas. How many vacant distribution centers are above 95? Zero. But heck, let's dump another 5.2 million square feet on Perryman and destroy the only remaining land left on that peninsula. Number 4, revitalizing older industrial areas of Harford County. For 20 years, you've been dumping these massive freight distribution centers on our part of the county, and there has been no revitalization of the Aberdeen-Perryman area, thanks to our representative. Vacant strip centers, dilapidated buildings, and houses are still lining Route 40. We have no intention of backing down and allowing you to continue to destroy our property values, our quality of life, our health, our water, and our environment, while you divert the county's resources to protect those which live above I-95. We demand new leadership and a new, different path forward, and we will not stop until we get it, because we deserve it.
Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Jillian Miller, 408 Chrisfield Drive, Abingdon, Maryland. I want to start by saying Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Also, don't forget to shine a light on recovery this month. 1 month ago, my neighbor's son overdosed, and I have watched his light dim every day. I'm here to speak to you tonight about closed caption and virtual option. First, I want to say welcome back to your new sessions, gentlemen. I want to also start by wishing you a productive year advocating for us all. I'm here tonight to address the same concerns I have had in the previous year. ADA compliance for council meetings. Though Harford TV currently adds closed captioning after the meetings and posts the videos on YouTube, it can take days to be available to watch. For example, the council meeting on 9/13 only became available to view with closed caption on 9/16. This does not allow those who require closed caption to have the same amount of time as those who do not, to review the previous meeting and address concerns. So what does the ADA compliance state? Americans with Disabilities Act under the ADA materials made available by public entities must be accessible. This includes state and local governments. The obligation also applies to places of public accommodations. The 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. This law mandates that any content that airs on television must have captions on the online version. Television programming and its related guidelines are governed by the Federal Communications Commission. What is the cost to make the change to this system? Governor Hogan just made a proclamation of technology first, which would include closed captioning. This would allow for virtual participation also. Out of the $1.2 billion budget, per the updated budget for FY23, which is found on your site, there's $13.5 million in funds allotted for information and communication technology. The estimated cost of adding closed caption has been provided to you by Harford TV, which I have verified. In addition, I am asking that when you have nothing new for a specific area of the agenda, it would be helpful to hear each area stated, followed by nothing new. If I am unable to obtain a copy of the agenda item 456, nothing new, means absolutely nothing to me, because I do not know what goes in place of those numbers. Thank you all for being open to be more inclusive so that everyone in our community can participate in their government.
Thank you, ma'am.
The last speaker this evening is Paul Falacci.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Paul Falacci, 320 Marina Avenue in Perryman. Interesting information. Some of the information I was going to talk about, enterprise zones, was stolen from a previous speaker here tonight. But just reflecting on what was said tonight, both from the council and from the people speaking, very interesting. So a lot of resident-friendly items are on hold, like land preservation, south of 95, sidewalks, road improvement, traffic improvement. A lot of this stuff is on hold, I noticed. And items that are implemented are enterprise zones. So what good have enterprise zones brought to the residents that live within them? An enterprise zone is a geographic area that has been granted special tax breaks, regulatory exemptions, or other public assistance in order to encourage private economic development and job creation. So since I'll talk more about the tax incentives. tax credits are available for 10 years on the property tax in an economic zone for new building, and then a $1,000 tax credit per person for a new employee in the first year that can be increased to $6,000 per employee over 3 years. In 2022, what's happened in the economic zone in the Aberdeen, Havre de Grace area and Perryman? We've got an empty freight distribution center on Route 40 and Old Stepney Road in Perryman, over 850 square feet. That's been empty for 9 months, all of 2022. Sounds like a great location, 850,000 square feet. And what have the residents in Perryman got this year? We've gotten 3 roads that have been tar and chipped, the high-end tar and chipped. Canning House Road, Clubhouse Road. On Chelsea Road, where all these freight distribution centers are, they got fresh pavement in 2022. There's no progress has been indicated on the Spashusha Road project, and the park project on Perryman Park has been dropped as well. So enterprise zones have not been very good for the residents that live in the enterprise zones. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There are no more speakers, Mr. President.
If no one else signed up, this meeting will be adjourned.